These are the worst religious leaders of all time. For this list, we'll be looking at people who rose to power through religion and then used that power to cause widespread harm. Our countdown includes Jeffrey Lundgren, Jim Jones, David Koresh, and more. Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden is one of the most infamous terrorist masterminds in history. In his native Saudi Arabia, he was regarded as a war hero for his role in fighting the Soviets in the Soviet-Afghan War. However, in 1988, he founded the Islamist terrorist group Al-Qaeda. His larger goal was to establish a supranational Islamic state. In my opinion, Osama bin Laden founded the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda for a number of main reasons. First, when bin Laden witnessed imbalance and conflict in the Middle East region, including the intervention of Western countries and the failure of local governments, he saw that many Muslim countries were facing internal and external challenges. At the same time, he denounced American foreign policy and secularism, declared a jihad against the United States, and was behind the 1998 bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania and the 2001 September 11th attacks that killed almost 3,000 people. The next was for a personal political and religious goal, promoting an Islamic revolution and overthrowing non-Islamic governments in the region. He believes that causing terror and fear through terrorist attacks will help repel the American presence and its allies from the region. Furthermore, bin Laden and Al-Qaeda see themselves as defenders of Islam against threats from the West, especially from the United States. They use the call to fight against the Islamic enemy to attract support and propaganda for their cause. Since bin Laden's death in 2011, other terrorist leaders, like the now deceased Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi of ISIS and Abu Bakr Shoko of Boko Haram, have continued his legacy of religious violence. Joseph Kony. You may have first heard of this Ugandan militant from the Kony 2012 documentary video, which went viral. Founder of the Christian fundamentalist rebel group, the Lord's Resistance Army, Kony is responsible for horrible atrocities in Uganda, the Congo, and Sudan. Kony was a Catholic altar boy and directed his soldiers to draw crosses on themselves and their guns with oil before battle. He also incorporated traditional African rituals into their routine. However, he's known for his history of torturing civilians. Joseph Kony committed many acts of torture and cruelty against civilians, especially in the 1990s and 2000s. The torture not only targeted adults, but also included children. They forced children to become soldiers. Kony and the LRA kidnapped thousands of children from civilian communities and then force them to join their ranks as fighters. Children are trained to participate in attacks, murders, and sabotage. At the same time, the LRA carried out a series of attacks on innocent villages, killing and torturing civilians. These actions often include stabbings, killings, cutting off body parts, and burning houses. More horrifying is the sexual torture. Kony and the LRA used sexual coercion as part of their war strategy. Women and children are often victims of these practices, and they are often sold into sexual slavery afterward. In addition to acts of physical torture, the LRA also carries out psychological torture by haunting, threatening, and forcing victims to commit immoral acts or harm themselves. Just for torture, the LRA also uses special squads to carry out raids on residential villages or strategic locations, causing serious consequences for civilians. The brutal actions of Joseph Kony and the LRA have caused great suffering and chaos among populations in the affected areas, and have attracted concern and condemnation from the international community. As of writing, he was in hiding, wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Jim Jones. On the outside, Jim Jones was a charismatic preacher whose church, the People's Temple, promoted economic and racial equality. Behind the facade, he was a con man who used techniques of mental domination and mental abuse to control and manipulate people to follow him. It is impossible not to mention his use of fake miracles by holding ceremonies and speeches where he himself created miracle phenomena. often through deceptive techniques and intellectual tricks. These phenomena created blind trust on the part of the believers and increased reverence for him. At the same time, Jones controlled all the information his followers received, from forbidding them from contact with the outside world to monitoring and censoring all messages and information they received. This makes believers more dependent and easier to control. Furthermore, psychological abuse techniques were used masterfully by Jones. Examples include imposing complete control, creating fear and anxiety, forcing followers to perform acts they do not want to perform, and establishing an unsafe environment for followers to not think or act freely. Jones's creation of an environment within People's Church, where everyone felt like family, and he was considered a father figure to all, led to increased commitment and loyalty from believers and made them feel inseparable from the community. As word of his misconduct spread in the 1970s, he left California to found a commune in Jonestown, Guyana, South America. Reports of further abuse led California Congressman Leo Ryan to investigate personally in 1978. While in Guyana, he was shot and killed, and Jones ordered his followers to drink Flavor Aid laced with cyanide. 909 people died, many of them kids. This horrific tragedy is where we get the expression drinking the Kool-Aid. Dov Lior. In Israel, Orthodox Rabbi Dov Lior is a powerful religious and political figure, part of a far-right nationalist movement for an ethnic and religious state. Lior has gone farther than many, however, with his open support for the murder of civilians and ethnic cleansing. In 1994, for instance, he lavished praise on Israeli-American mass murderer Baruch Goldstein, who killed 29 Muslims in a Hebron mosque. Dov Lior described Baruch Goldstein as a man of pure soul and paid his respects to Goldstein, calling him a national hero and saying that Goldstein acted to protect the Jewish people and spiritual security. It was his statements that caused strong opposition from the international community, as well as from some parts of the Jewish community, because they believed that Goldstein's actions were never acceptable and were indefensible. Dov Lior's praises caused outrage and strong criticism from many sides, including the Israeli government and Jewish communities around the world. However, Dov Lior maintained his position and refused to withdraw his praise of Goldstein, causing a long debate over religious and political views. He also claimed the 2015 Islamic State attacks on Paris, which left 130 civilians dead, were deserved as payback for the Holocaust. Lior has translated his intolerant views into action as well. When Israel invaded the Gaza Strip in 2014, he issued a religious ruling that encouraged soldiers to kill civilians and, if necessary, destroy Gaza entirely. Ahara Shoko. In March of 1995, terrorists released sarin gas inside the Tokyo subways, killing 13 people. Thousands more were injured. It was the worst attack on Japan since World War II. It had been masterminded by a man named Shoko Asahara through his cult, Aum Shinrikyo, a doomsday spin-off of Buddhism, although its relationship to Buddhism is debated. Shoko Asahara is known for her strange and unique actions and views. Asahara believed he was a priest of happiness and called himself Lord of Heaven, or Lord of Happiness. He predicted that the world would end in 1997 and that his followers would be saved. That's why he believed that the 2 atomic bomb incidents in Hiroshima and Nagasaki were part of God's divine plan. He is also known for his brainwashing sessions often held at Aum Shinrikyo's centralized centers, including locations such as Asahara's commune in Yamanashi Prefecture and other locations throughout Japan. Brainwashing sessions can be held periodically or irregularly, depending on the decisions of Aum Shinrikyo's leadership, and last from many hours to even days. During brainwashing sessions, believers are asked to participate in a series of activities, including taking drugs or pharmaceutical substances that are believed to expand consciousness and put them in contact with the supreme truth or the highest level of consciousness. Listen to music or simulated piano sounds to induce a special mental state. Perform miracles or religious rituals that Asahara and other leaders of Aum Shinrikyo believe have spiritual or creative powers. Those who participate in them are persuaded and coerced to comply with all directions, instructions, and directives, and are isolated from the outside world. He hoped to trigger a third world war and apocalypse, and to distract police from investigating the cult. Of course, it had the opposite effect. It turned out that Aum Shinrikyo had been experimenting with chemical and biological weapons for years and were responsible for previous attacks. Asahara and his accomplices were put to death in 2018.